Good evening once again, and welcome to another edition of the Houston Roundball Review presents Folks Talkin Sports. I'm Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review, and joining me is Andy Yanez in the upper right screen for those who are watching on YouTube and Twitter at Folks Talk Sports. And then we got Willy Gibson below Andy, and then next to him and below me, and not quite Hollywood Squares, is James Mueller from the Daily Cougar, the sports editor from the Cougar. James, how are you, sir? You got some drama at the house, right? Over there.
Yeah. Transformer blew behind our house, so we're hoping to get that fixed, but we'll see.
Oh, blowing transformer, that's a big deal, James. That's more than just a power out.
Yeah, that's going to be wild.
Yeah, that's going to be a while there. All right, Andy Yanez, how are you?
I'm doing good, Kris. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. And Mr. Gibson, how are you, sir?
I am phenomenal. Gentlemen, how are you?
We can barely hear you, sir. Yeah, we can barely hear you, Willy Gibson. We heard you fine there before, but it's not much better.
How's that? No?
It sounds like it might be connected to like your device audio instead of the headphones.
Yeah, it sounds like you're like in an echo room. So it's kind of weird.
Check.
Almost like you're in the bathroom or something.
It might be the audio settings.
With the great acoustics, but yeah. Huh?
Yeah, no, because before I couldn't hear you through the headphones. Now I'm back through the headphones. So that's the weird part about it.
Yeah, that's
might
weird.
Be the audio settings.
Okay, because before we went live, we heard you fine, and now we went live. It's a little different. It's a little more of a not direct sound, but it's all right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Try it again if you can, and then we'll make it work, man. Live streaming TV and folks on who listen to it on iHeart, Apple, audio wise, you'll hear it rather than see it. But thank you very much for following us on Folks Talkin Sports. But James, since you were able to join us, I wasn't sure you'd be able to make it. I'm going to pull this up because you said you want to comment on it. You have some things to not quite get off your chest, but things you want to discuss in disagreement about the national media speaking so highly of UH Cougar football. Case in point, this is Tim Brando, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
The Cougs ranked 10th in his preseason poll. Mr. Gibson will love who's ranked number 1, the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 1. We got Ohio State 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3, Baylor 4, Utah 5, Oklahoma 6, NC State 7, Notre Dame 8, Michigan 9, and 10. The Houston Cougars, Dana Holgerson's Houston Cougars. James, have at it. What do you think?
Oh, I just when I saw this, I was just kind of shocked. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Houston's going to have a really good year. I expect them to win the American, but 10 overall in the country. Like I said, I told Andy and Kris that basically any team on that bottom just out except maybe Kentucky, I'd probably pick over Houston if they were going head to head. I just think, I mean, they got a lot of good returners. The offense should be pretty good. But defense in the secondary kind of worries me. And so I think I just, and the schedule is, even if Houston goes 12-0, that's not a top 10 schedule to be top 10, in my opinion. Unless they beat everyone by like 60 points, then they're, flexing their muscle. But I was really surprised when I saw this.
Andy, well, I'm going to just go into it because one team that's not in this preseason poll, this is Tim Brando, Texas A&M. Where are they in this? Not even in his just out. Thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I was shocked on that as well. I mean, A&M's a consensus top 10 team for most national media people when you see them put out their polls in a bunch of sites as well. And I'm sure once, week 1 comes around, they'll be a top 10 in the AP poll, but not to even be there's 6 teams in the just out. So they're not even top 16 technically.
Yeah, Clemson, Ole Miss, USC, Oklahoma State, Kentucky, and LSU.
Sure, they had, some disappointing finishes last year. It should have been better than what their records showed. But they've got more talent than most people in the country, and they brought in the greatest recruiting class in the history of recruiting in terms of, highest rating ever. So that surprises me for sure.
And Andy, I'll get your thoughts on this because we got this from Tim Brando. This second slide, it's not as easy to read, but it's the best football teams in Texas. And number one is Texas A&M. So the Aggies 1, Baylor 2, Houston 3, the Longhorns 4. And let me say right off the bat, as a UH alum and an old head UH alum, it's great to see Houston better than Texas in anything. I don't care what it is. So great to see that. SMU 5, TCU 6, Texas Tech 7, UTSA 8, Cougs first opponent, UNT, North Texas 9, UTEP 10, Rice 11, Texas State 12, SFA 13, Sam Houston State 14, and then Incarnate Word 15. But yeah, Andy, your thoughts on A&M being considered ranked the best college football team in Texas, but not even ranked in Tim Brando's top 16 nationally.
Yeah, when we're focusing in on Tim Brando's, this Tim Brando of Fox Sports, and when I think of something like that, it makes me think, I wonder what their criteria is. And to be quite honest, when it comes to these national polls, and I guess in this instance, that doesn't really even make sense because we're talking about Texas A&M. They're not a school that you would happen to just glance over and forget about. So I'd be curious to see what was kind of his criteria on. I think I agree more with that. The second polling that you had shown, I believe that was from Texas. From who?
What is it? Let me pull it up again if I can pull it up.
Texas Football Life. That's what it was.
That's it. Yeah, Texas Football Life. Yes, sir.
Which, I'd imagine they are probably much more in the sense of in the know when it comes to the Texas football teams. I tend to agree with theirs more, especially when it comes to, like James mentioned, with Texas A&M and the type of recruiting class that they're bringing in. I mean, that was all the hype heading into the offseason. It was something that blew up even a little bit when Nick Saban made a comment, or not Nick Saban, but we talked about how essentially his recruiting class has been one of the best that the Aggies are going to bring in. And going back to last season, what they were able to do and upset Alabama. So they're coming into this season with a lot of not only buzz, but a lot of excitement with what they were able to do. Baylor, obviously, of course, we know what they were able to do and build back, winning the Big 12 last season in their conference. And then you have Houston there, obviously, the buzz, like James said, just narrowly picked to win the American Athletic Conference this upcoming season, edging out Cincinnati. And to be quite honest, to go back to the Fox Sports poll, I think it's kind of it might be a testament to what Cincinnati was able to do, and kind of still feeling that where, hey, maybe we got to give some respect to a lot of these group of fives. But I agree with James. Houston at 10 has got to be way too high.
Willy Gibson.
Yes, sir.
Thoughts on Ohio State? The Ohio State being ranked number 1 preseason, according to Tim Brando, Fox Sports.
Accurate. I think when the AP comes out in a couple, maybe 2 weeks, it'll say the same. If not 1, then 2.
Yeah, I think in preseason polls, the way too early looks, whatever. 1, 2 is, whoever you talk to, either Ohio State or Bama. But Willy Gibson, how about your thoughts on Texas A&M not even being listed on this top 10, nor just out the other 6?
Yeah, that's interesting. They lost a few pieces, but they pretty much have a lot coming back. Their defense probably has to shore up with Leo leaving, but yeah, to not be in the top 10. You said Tim Brando?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So much so, I wonder if he went back and made a correction, like somebody pointed out to him, you forgot Texas A&M. I haven't seen it, but that it's like an obvious, apparent oversight.
I think someone on his Twitter commented about that, and he gave some reasoning or something, but I didn't understand it.
Okay, maybe he doesn't like Jimbo Fisher. Okay, I don't know.
or he likes Nick Saban and didn't appreciate the whole Jimbo Fisher.
Or that. So, could be that. But, hey, you're doing post. You got to be objective.
Yeah, what James said, his response was, sorry, overrated in my opinion in regards to Texas A&M. So he doesn't believe in the Aggies.
Wow.
It wasn't an oversight.
Okay, well, on the guest hotline, she's able to squeeze us into her busy schedule. An Aggie. I'm not going to, because I don't even know the year that she graduated. But an Aggie, Kim Y. Davis from Chalk Talk is going to chime in for a different, I'm going to really flip the script on some of you fans watching on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. Kim's here to also talk about the Astros and Texans. So how about those apples? Kim, how are you today, this evening?
I am good. Thank you for having me. Hey, everybody. It's training camp, so you notice my tan. I've not been to the beach. I've been to football practice. So it's hot. Day 8 of Texans camp. A lot going on there. And, of course, you mentioned Astros. We're in this final stretch of the regular season. Unfortunately, skipper Dusty Baker has COVID. They came in with a couple big trades to end the regular season. And it's a busy time for sports, especially in Houston.
And I'm glad you were able to join us. We've missed out, a few times for you being on Folks Talkin Sports. You've had deaths in the family. I've had deaths in the family. There's other issues. Life got in the way. Things like that also. But the Texans practiced today, right?
The Texans did practice today. They're off tomorrow, which is great. I can try to get caught up on some other work. They practiced today. The big thing in training camp for them is to get into playing shape, to not have a lot of injuries. That's really important to them, and to see what these guys look like on tape. And this weekend, on Saturday night, they will play the first preseason game against the Saints. As head coach Lovie Smith said today, listen, whenever they keep score, you want to win, right? But that's not the most important thing in preseason. If they get a win on Saturday, great. But what's most important is that they can do some more evaluations, see how this team is progressing, see how the things they've been putting in off-season, OTAs, mini camps, and now training camp, how that is registering. And you can't really make a whole lot of assessments until you're finishing plays and you're hitting other people. So they're looking forward to that, and I am too. And just it's about the effort. Lovey is about show up and show out. And one thing he says every day is that he has been pleased with the effort, and they've got some work to do. I mean, there's nobody with rose-colored glasses talking about this team lining up for the Super Bowl. However, this time of the season, everybody's got the same shot. I mean, be ready.
How much of practice is the media allowed to watch?
So in training camp, we can watch the whole thing. Once the season starts, so for training camp, you get to watch the entirety of it. Once the season starts and they go into their regular season mode, we probably can watch about the first 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 minutes max. You're not really seeing much. You're seeing some stretching and warming up and a few drills. But right now we get to see it all. And
correct me if I'm wrong, the Texans, in that case, even training camp, that's different than any other local Houston team. To watch, media can watch all of practice right now.
Right. That is true.
Rockets, no. You talking about Astros, whatever, no. College-wise,
yeah. Well, Astros.
Nobody.
I mean, Astros don't really practice during the season, but when you're in spring training, you can watch it. Astros is a little different. Baseball is different, but basketball is not. And you mentioned basketball. Rockets head coach Stephen Silas was out at practice that would have been Friday, and he was there for the whole practice. And we got a chance to chat with him a little, and he said it was great to be out there, and he got a chance to visit with Lovey a little bit after practice. And yeah.
Andy, James, Willie, questions for Kim Y. Davis. Chalk Talk. I've known her for, probably as long as James has been alive. So going 20 plus years, something like that. I mean, that's about right, sis?
That's about right.
Yeah.
Probably so. Yeah.
Anybody? Toss out some questions.
Yeah, I'll go first. Kim, I'm curious, what have you seen from Davis Mills early on in Texas training camp?
So this is day 2 of Davis Mills. He's still with Pep Hamilton. The offense is different. You know, Pep's offense is a lot more simplified. And so Davis, I think he looks pretty good. And when I say that, he looks good in camp in terms of what you see. I don't know what his upside is and how good he can be. And I never want to like cite a person's limitations. I don't know what they are. But what I see from him is he looks pretty good. I don't know that he is the quarterback of the future, but he is a quarterback of this team for 2022, and that's going to be the case. So he's looked pretty good. And a guy that I know you guys may be interested in is the former Cougar, Kyle Allen, who has also, looked pretty good. So Davis looks like, listen, everybody's saying the right things. The offensive guys are saying how he's, they can tell he's grown. He commands the offense. He commands the room. And you got to do that, though, right? I don't think they're being dishonest, but you got to give your guy that support when you know beyond a doubt he's the guy. And however good you're going to be this season is going to hinge a lot on what he's able to do with this offense. Their offensive line play, I think, is definitely going to be better. And the running back room has to be better. I mean, they could probably put the 5 of us in it and it'd be better. But it's definitely going to be better. I mean, better than us even.
Okay, well, we got comments from Wise Citizens on YouTube. Thanks very much for tuning in. He says he's got Kyle Allen is better than Davis Mills. We shall see.
Okay, we shall see. Yeah.
James, Willie, what anything for Kim?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead, James.
Okay. Just, over the past few seasons, obviously they've been down years for the Texans and the fan base has sort of struggled a little bit. But from what I've seen, it seems like, the McNair family, a bunch of people are making efforts to sort of rejuvenate this fan base. Have you seen any of that? Because I know fans, they're allowed to come to some of these media or preseason stuff. So do you get a sense that there's sort of some new excitement, I guess, among the fans, just with who they brought in and stuff?
So here's what I'll tell you. They are doing some other stuff. I mean, even Lovey is involved in some of what they're doing from a marketing standpoint and being, he's really about the fans are a part of it. And the fans have been out there. But here's what I've noticed. They seem really subdued. I mean, I had a little bit of excitement on Friday, a couple cheers. And there's a former Texan who was there the other day talking on the sideline, Quentin Dent, who played for this team. And I said, so Quentin, what do you think? So we talked about some of the players. And I said, camp just feels really subdued. And he said, well, Kim, they don't have any superstars. And I was like, good point. I mean, the best player on this team, their superstar, is Larry Tunsil. He's an O-lineman. Wow. People don't get excited about that, So you don't have the personalities like the J.J. Watt and the Andre Johnson or the D-Hop and the Cushing. And, so that excitement that we saw, that hasn't come back. And so we'll probably have to wait until the games count. If they win real games, people will probably get a little more excited. And there's some exciting players on this team. They're just not superstars that people already come in looking at, right? They're going to have to earn it. And the fans are going to have to, if they win some games early, I think fans will get on board a little bit, but they are having to work overtime in terms of their marketing department and their business operations, as you said, to re-engage fans because they've done such a poor job in a number of areas over the past few seasons, and they lost they lost some of that energy for sure.
Will?
Yeah. So the Astros and a Texans question, but the Texans question first. Is there any conversation about the Texans settling with the 3 women on the Deshaun Watson situation? Are they saying anything locally?
No. So when they settled with them, they didn't really, say anything locally. Their thing was, I wouldn't say they wanted to make it go away, but I know that they didn't want that to be a distraction, right? So they settled it. They settled it before camp, so before we had really the access, and it has not really been a conversation since then. They haven't made any kind of, okay, so here's why we did it, and I don't expect that they're going to do that either. So no, to answer the question, they have not.
Got it. And then as far as the Astros, they were in Cleveland this week. They split the 4-game series with the Guardians. I have to catch myself.
The Guardians.
on that. 70-40, 11 games up. Or is it pretty much cruise control in September, or do they expect Seattle to make a run, or is it pretty much just get through the 51 games and get ready for October?
So I think they want to finish with some momentum. They want to get everybody healthy, right? And they're not sleeping on Seattle, because remember when they had that huge stretch. I think it was 14 games they won in a row, and so they were able to kind of close the gap. So that could happen if you take your eyes off of what's really important. They're definitely not on cruise control. The moves they made last week was just a reminder that they are working toward postseason, but they still want to win, because they want to win, and they want to have home field as much as possible, right? So they've been kind of battling with the Yankees for best in the American League, but they're not on. I don't think that's really how Dusty operates. So they're definitely not on cruise control.
All right, Kim, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
Go down the regular season Texans schedule. Make your predictions, okay?
So I don't really like to do predictions. I only do this here with you, and it's something I just.
I don't like to
here's
do
the
it either.
thing.
Go ahead.
But here's the thing. Until we get through camp, they have 91 guys now, because there's so many spots that you don't know about this team in terms of who's going to be here. And so until I know the roster, it's tough to say, but I can give you some guesses about it.
Okay, that's fine. Week 1. The Colts. Home for the Colts.
Oh, man. Home for the Colts. The Colts are better, and that's going to be a tough one. It's Lovey's first game as head coach. And, I'm going to have to say, you know what? I'm going to say the Texans are going to upset the Colts.
Okay.
It's a guess, but that's what I'm going to say.
And keep track of the wins and losses, okay?
Got it. 1-0 so far.
Week 2 at Denver.
That's going to be tough. I think they may have a loss in Denver.
All right. Week 3 at Chicago.
I'm going to say, that's homecoming for Lovey. He played, he coached the Bears. They're going to be super motivated. They've got a young quarterback there as well. But the Bears have a really good defense. I'm going to say that they go into Chicago and they upset the Bears.
All right. Week 4, home for the Chargers.
I will say Chargers in that one.
Okay. Week 5, at Jacksonville.
I think they'll beat Jacksonville. They're not very good.
Okay. Week 6, they got a bye.
They'll win that one.
Yep, they won't lose. Week 7 at the Raiders.
Yeah, the Raiders are good. I'm going to go with the Raiders.
Week 8, home versus the Titans.
This team has really played the Titans well. I think that I'm going to give them a win at home against the Titans, against any kind of better judgment. But, I'm going to go with the Titans.
That's 7 games. Andy, what's the record so far?
4-3.
All right. Week 9 is a Thursday game, home versus the Eagles.
I'm going to go with the Eagles.
All right. Week 10 at the Giants.
Yeah, I'm going to give them the Giants. They'll beat the Giants.
Week 11, home versus a once very proud franchise. Now been run into the trash by the sorry behind owner, the Commanders.
I'm gonna give him just because of all of that. I'm gonna give him a win against the Commanders, which sounds so odd. I'm gonna still call them the Washington football team.
It sounds better than Commanders.
It does sound better than the Commanders.
All right, week 12 at the Dolphins.
Huh. I think they can win against the Dolphins. I think that's a game they can win. That's a game they've got a shot at winning.
Okay, so where are we at now, Kim's record, Andy?
Right now we're at 7-4 for the Texans.
Okay.
Texans got 7 wins.
Yeah,
According
on
to
a
you.
3-game
I
winning
have to revisit that. Okay.
beating the Dolphins, beating Washington, New York, Tennessee once, Jacksonville, Chicago, and the Colts week 1.
Yeah, I probably have to change that Colts pick. That sounds kind of ridiculous. Can I change that pick?
You can, sure. This is
Let me-
this is August 7th. You know, nobody's sold you to this. August 7th. It's all right.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and
So now we drop them
make that change.
All right.
to
6
6
and
and
5.
5.
All right. Week 13.
Let me hear this one.
Week 13.
Okay.
The Titanic tilt
Let me hear
that
this.
everyone is waiting for. Every Texans fan, every Browns fan. The NFL is probably waiting on this one too. Who you got? Texans versus the Browns at home.
So I think it depends on who's the quarterback, right? I think if Deshaun Watson's the quarterback, the Browns win that game.
Okay.
If it's Jacoby
So what is it-
Brissett,
what's
I
your
think the
gut say?
Texans got a shot. I have no idea. I think he will be playing by week 12 because of
Okay.
the appeals and they're going to be the countersuit. So I'm going to have to go with the Browns.
All right.
They
Week
got a good
14.
defense.
Week 14 at the Cowgirls. And yes, I said Cowgirls. I don't care who they are, what they are, as long as I have an inkling of fandom left in the Washington franchise, they will always be the Cowgirls to me. Yes, the Cowgirls at Dallas.
So the Cowgirls, I think they will. I think they'll lose the Cowgirls as much as it pains me to say that.
All right. Week 15, home versus the Chiefs.
I'll take the Chiefs in that one.
Week 16, at the Titans.
I'm going to take the Titans.
Week 17, home versus the Jaguars.
They're going to win that game at home against the Jaguars.
All right. Then wrap it up. Week 18, at the Colts.
What's my record now?
Right now they're 7 and 9.
So that's kind of the onside where I thought they might be. On the high end is 7. So I'm going to say they lose to the Colts.
All right.
So I think on the high end, like super optimistic, they're at 7 games. They're
Okay.
somewhere between 5 and 7 to me when I look at them as they're built and as I think they may end up with a roster to start the season. So yeah, that's optimistic to say 7 games.
That's fair. And once again, this is colleague, friend of known Kim White Davis. And just real quick, I don't want to age you, but for youngsters, the people who do not know, Kim let's tell about how you started and your history, because she was one of the first to be on TV in town. Correct?
Yes, I was. And AJ reminded me that I'm the first Black woman in the market. And I was like, to do sports? And I was like, really? It was a case when I went to New Orleans too. But so I actually started in print because I thought that made you more of a journalist. So I was a writer. I wrote for the Houston Sun, I wrote for the Wire Services, and I wrote for the Houston Post. And I also did work for BET when they had real sports programming. I used to go and do a show called the Budweiser Sports Report with guys like Mike Wilbon and Bill Roden and, just some of the great writers. And I was the only one from this area. They're all from the East Coast. So I got a chance to work with them and develop. James Brown, that's where we first worked together. I did that, and then I started doing some talk radio. I used to do a Oilers show on KCOH with Butch Woolfolk, and I used to do a weekly Oilers show. And then I would do little updates for Ralph when I was on the road because I traveled with the Oilers. So I did that. Then I started doing stuff at Channel 11 because that's where I interned. So I worked in TV. I did Steve Smith Sunday. They had a show that was called Bullseyes, kind of one of those roundtable shows. I did that show and did some packages for them. And then I did morning radio and Magic. I did Houston Comets radio broadcast. I was the host of the pregame, halftime, and postgame shows, 2 of their championship seasons. And then I went to New Orleans, where I anchored in New Orleans at the ABC station. I went to DC. I did some college sideline work. And I came back to Houston as vice president of the Super Bowl and did that job for a couple of years. And then I started basically doing some freelance work and started my business. And then I went to Channel 2, which is my last, I guess, real job, and worked there about 6 years as a news manager. I was a senior producer and I hosted a show. And then I left and started my own business and started doing Chalk Talk. So that's kind of my really 30-year career in a nutshell, so I don't bore you. But I always say when I tell you I've done this for 30 years that I started when I was 12. That's my number.
and I'm not
and cover those two Rockets championships, right?
Yes, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this. I don't want her to say it. I'm going to say this. Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mueller, Mr. Yanez. Why Citizens King, folks, Waffles on watching on YouTube. You heard her resume or her history. I'm going to toss a boulder at my alma mater. Don't care. It's our show. All that she's done and accomplished in her career. UH will not give her a credential.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm saying it. UH will not give her a credential. They can
and you know what's funny,
Go ahead.
Kris? I used to cover them. That's really where I first met Andre Ware, when he was in the Heisman run, right? So I covered them back then. And of course, I moved a bit in and out of the market in my career. So I just got to the point where I stopped. I'm like, why am I fighting them to cover the games? You know, it was just, it's not ego for me, but it was just disrespectful. Like, okay, never mind. They told me, this is what they told me. And I kept the email because they put it in writing. Is it Chris Conway? What's his name? Conrad,
yeah.
Yeah. He told me, he said, well, I just don't think you're committed enough to college athletics. Well, that's not my job, to be committed to college athletics. I tell stories. And so he said, it's not about numbers. It's not about any of that. Basically, we don't think you're committed, and we can't just let anybody come and cover the team. He said they would allow me to come to practices and press conferences. And I said, I'm good. So I don't cover them. And this is probably the most I've talked about them. So, you know, it's enough to do in the market, but yeah, I don't cover them.
Right. So, like I said, I put it out there. Okay. So I put it out there, and what y'all gonna do to me? So whatever,
Right.
you know. So we shall see, and that's I'm part of this show. You know, being credential for a while, and all those great things. You know, yeah, they could revoke my credential. Wouldn't stop me from doing this show. Wouldn't stop me from doing Houston Roundball Review. You know, all those things, avenues, you know, still exist for me and will continue to exist for me. Kim has her platforms as well. So, Kim Davis, how can folks find you, get in touch with you, watch your shows, and see what you do?
So I do a show called Chalk Talk live every Tuesday at 11 a.m. and it's on every platform that you may be watching now. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And you can also follow me on Twitter for like daily updates on Rockets, Astros, Texans, and really the league, you know, the whole league. I mean, I focus on the local teams because that's what I'm day in, day out with them, but I cover the league and what's happening. You can follow me on Twitter at Kim Y. Davis, and you can follow me on Facebook at Kim Y. Davis Media, on Instagram. And stay tuned because I'm hoping to be able to announce the launch of a new TV project coming up in a couple months, but hopefully I can announce it in about a month. And when I do, I'll come here and share it with Kris. But I appreciate you always sharing the space with me, Kris, being a resource when I need you. And I'm glad I could make it today. Sundays get kind of tough when it gets to football season. So I'm glad I was able to come and join you guys for a little bit on this Sunday. It's good to see y'all.
Very much appreciated, Kim. You take care, and I'll probably talk to you after the show, okay?
All right. Thanks a lot. See you guys.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You.
Once again, that's Kim Y.
All
Davis, the Chalk Talk, joining us. Just wanted to finally glad to get her to be a part of the show on the, as my young colleague, Mr. Yanez, likes to describe it, as yet to be sponsored guest hotline a portion of the show. So getting back into that mode. So try to get more guests on Folks Talk Sports as well as Let's Rage Cougs. Andy, what's the countdown for Let's Rage Cougs?
27 days, but let me make sure. Yes, sir. 27 days. Have that memorized off the top of my head.
All right. Okay. So glad you can make it and maybe try to hopefully get other guests on future editions of FTS. And I'm going to try to get some guest colleagues on Let's Rage Cougs, of course, the unofficial post-game show of UH Athletics, as well as my Let's Talk Houston Rockets show. Got some folks trying to line them up for future shows there. Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
Shifting gears to the pros. Is it much ado about nothing with Kareem Hunt and the Browns?
Yeah, essentially he requested a trade, and they said, "Oh, that's nice. Practice starts at 2:00."
And he was there, right?
Hunt.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt. Yeah. That's nice. You want to trade? Okay. No. See you at 2:00.
I mean, okay, because I think the trade request was reported earlier Sunday, right?
Well, he made it yesterday.
Okay.
He made it
All
yesterday. Right. Yeah, but what it is, and I get it. He's last year was deal. He's backing up Nick Chubb. Well, splitting time. Backing up Nick Chubb, and he wants to start. He's playing for the next deal. He's playing for the next contract. And I know, Kim White Davis and yourself and gentlemen that are what's his name, Andy and James. We look at the NFL as the National Football League. Players look at the NFL as not for long. And he's looking to capitalize on his earning power, earning potential. So he wants to play more. He wants to start. He wants to showcase his skills in preparation of next year's contract. And he knows that won't happen here in Cleveland. So he asked for a trade. Again, see you at 2:00. And now to appease him, maybe they gave him some first team reps in training camp, day 10. Does that translate to September 11th in Charlotte? Probably not, but we shall see.
How old is Kareem?
Well, Kareem is 27.
So
Kareem is 27.
Come right around the prime of his NFL career.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the last year of his contract, current deal?
This will be the last year of his contract. He'll be a free agent at the end of the season.
Okay.
Yep,
Well,
Kareem is 27. He'll be he just turned 27 yesterday.
Oh, how about that?
So he requested a trade on his birthday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yesterday. He turned 27 yesterday.
So I guess he was hoping for a birthday present.
Yeah.
And the Browns said no, and we'll see you at 2:00 on Sunday. So, All right. Well, so much for that. Now, another Brown. Get everybody to discuss this one. Another Brown, Deshaun Watson. Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
You kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Went against your gut in terms of the suspension. So just go from there about what the judge announced, the NFL appealing, and go forward.
Yeah. Me and Kris talked about it Monday. Last week, after I saw the PA release their statement of them not appealing Judge Sue L. Robinson's decision. Now, this is before it was made public.
Mm-hmm.
So they preemptively said, we will not appeal her decision, and we ask that the NFL do the same, not appeal the decision. So that, from me, along with some other things I had heard about some of the hearing, led me to believe he didn't get anything because the NFL presented 13 cases and Judge Sue L. Robinson threw 9 of them out. So there are only 4 that she allowed. And that kind of raised a red flag to me. Like, well, maybe the NFL didn't have as strong a case as they thought. So along with that, that made me believe, okay, they didn't get anything. Well, she gave him 6 games. Now, the thing about that is, in her decision, it's a 16-page decision. I was able to read it Wednesday. You would think that most people on the outside, without the information, you would think the league lost. She sided with Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
No, you read that decision. She called his actions egregious. She basically sided with the NFL on every point. So essentially, they won. The issue being the NFL is trying to reset precedent on this case.
Yes.
She mentioned in her report, in her decision, that the precedent for nonviolent sexual assault, which is what we're discussing here, the accusations against Deshaun Watson, the league's precedent has been 3 games, a 3-game suspension for those players involved with nonviolent sexual assault accusations. She gave him 6. So she took the league's precedent and doubled it. The league still sees fit that that's not enough. They want an indefinite suspension and an $8 million fine. She did not level a fine. She gave him 6 games. So the league, in turn, appeals. Now it goes to either Commissioner Roger Goodell or his designee. And a smart move, Commissioner Goodell, recused himself and appointed a designee, former New Jersey Attorney General Peter C. Harvey. He received the information on Friday. Now, the key about the appeal is this. No additional information can be presented. He has to take the same information that Judge Sue L. Robinson used to suspend Deshaun for 6 games and review that in the appeal. So conventional wisdom would say, well, if he has the same information she has, and she gave him 6 games, then he should uphold her decision and give Deshaun 6 games. Most people think that the league is going to get their pound of flesh, and Deshaun is going to get at least 12 games and an $8 million fine. Now, the significance of 12 games is this. You just mentioned the schedule game with Houston. It was week 14. The 12th game for the Cleveland Browns is December 4th at NRG Stadium in playing the Houston Texans. The league does not want Deshaun Watson playing in Houston on December 4th. That's why they're pushing for a 12-game suspension. The irony in that is the league makes the schedule. They could have made the Houston game week 3, right, and he would have missed it under the same original 6-game suspension. So that's crazy to me that, we can't have him in Houston because they don't want the press. They don't want the bad publicity. They don't want the protesters. They don't want all of that on December 4th.
Well, I agree with that. But the ratings would be massive, man. The TV ratings for that would be just huge. Yes, protests would be outside, but hey, that would be
I
a
agree.
ratings bonanza.
Oh, without question. But they're pandering to their base. And the irony of that again is they have to show. Well, there's a couple things. Roger Goodell took massive heat a few years back for the Ray Rice suspension.
Yes, correct.
Ray Rice was suspended 2 games for alleged assault against his then fiance. And as soon as Roger Goodell issued his 2-game suspension, out of thin air, some would like you to believe, a videotape was produced showing the elevator where Ray Rice assaulted his fiance.
Right.
Roger Goodell claimed, I had no access to that video. Okay. Seeing that every head of security for an NFL team is a former FBI agent, Okay.
Right.
He claimed he had no access to that video prior to his decision. So ever since then, he's tried his best to drop the hammer on players involved with cases. Players involved with cases against women. I'll say it again.
Not owners. Not owners.
Players.
Right.
Thank you. You see where I'm going. Not Robert Kraft. Not Daniel Snyder. Funny, we don't have a decision on that yet, but I'll move on.
Right.
So, yeah, that's where we stand right now. Peter C. Harvey has the information. He will be reviewing it. The CBA calls for an expedited decision, so most believe that a decision will be this week. Again, if he has all of the information and only the information that Sue L. Robinson has, and her decision was 6 games, conventional wisdom makes me ask, how can his decision be any different?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm curious about that. We'll see. Andy, James, I want to comment on that because we're going to wrap it up with basketball non-conference to close out this one, Folks Talkin Sports. You guys want to comment on the 6 games, the appeal, anything? The schedule?
No, I like Will said, when it came to the decision, initially when it was announced that it was going to be 6 games, like Will said, it would lead you to believe that they were in support of Deshaun Watson, and then when you actually get into the specifics, honestly, a lot of it got thrown back into the NFL in terms of not being able to suspend Deshaun Watson for a longer period of time. And like Will said, the NFL wants to push for an indefinite suspension of Watson. And at the end of the day, she said there's just no precedent for it. And she kind of phrased it where the NFL was trying to make her set that new precedent, which would have, at the end of the day, she didn't feel like it was right for her to do that. And she kind of put it back on the NFL. And then the NFL kind of ended up, maybe not necessarily the best phrase, but they kind of were the ones that were kind of put back into the fire. And Roger Goodell, like Will said, it kind of had to be with optics, where you have to appeal and at least make it seem like you're trying to enforce a stricter punishment. But I agree with Will. I mean, it's hard to, if it's the exact same information. It's Now, Will, I have a question for you. You said that Sue Robinson, she threw out 9 of the cases. Will those 9s come back into play, or would it only be the 4 that she focused on?
Just the 4. Only those 4.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially if it's at minimum 12, like that's double of what she said would have been exceeding the precedent, and I just don't see that. And it's going to be interesting come the next CBA negotiation talks come. That's really when the NFL and the Players Association will probably have to address that. But I don't see anything longer than 6 either.
James, go to you, as you've been a trooper, sticking on the show with no power at your house. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo what Andy and Will said. Will explained it really well. And while it's bad PR and for the league, and social media is going to continue to, blast Deshaun if he's at least not suspended a full season or indefinitely, that's just the reality of it. People are going to be upset. But it's so hard for them to come up with some. I mean, if they do extend it to like indefinite or a full season, like I don't see how they can logically explain that from the initial ruling. And like you said, there's no new evidence that's coming to light in this, so I really don't see it going much more. Maybe it gets bumped up a few games, but I can't see it going more than like 8. But I think it will probably stick at 6. Stick with 6. Yeah, that's just
all right.
My bad.
Let's get into basketball. Non-conference schedules for 2 local teams were announced in the last few days. The graphic on this is not great. Let's see if we can pull it up without throwing it off the screen. There we go. Okay, I don't want that. What did I just do? There, okay. Oh, there we go. Right there. All right, the Houston Cougars men's basketball schedule. I'm going to read it because the dates, you can't read the dates. You see the team names, but not the dates. We're going to contrast that with the next slide for Texas Southern men's basketball. You'll see a difference in which is better to read, easier to read. Cougs, November 7th, Northern Colorado. November 11th, in the Veterans Classic at Annapolis versus St. Joseph's. And then in the Cougar Classic for 2 games, basically made out of necessity. Coach Sampson said a few teams backed out of some multi-team events for Houston, so they had to make their own multi-team event this season. First game will be November 14th versus Oral Roberts and Max Asmus, one of the leading scorers in the country in the backcourt. That'll be a fun matchup. Asmus against Jamal Shead, Marcus Sasser. Then November 16th, Texas Southern, home game. 2 H-Town teams battling. I'm looking forward to that. November 20th, at Oregon. 26th versus Kent State. 29th versus Norfolk State. December 3rd in Fort Worth, Dickies Arena, St. Mary's. Should be a good game. December 6th, home versus North Florida. December 10th, home versus Alabama. I think a lot of Coug fans, for sure, remember the goaltending, non-goaltending of last season's matchup. Looking forward to that. Got this game circled on the calendar. We'll see about, revenge or whatever. I'm sure one colleague specifically is going to ask about, Kelvin, do you think it's going to be revenge in the game and blah, 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 whatever. We know what that colleague is, don't we, guys? November 13th, we got North Carolina A&T in the Coaches versus Racism game. November 17th at Virginia. Virginia should be better than they were last season when the Cougs waxed them in Houston by 20. In the wrap-up non-conference, December 21st. I think it's in November there. December 21st versus McNeese. Andy, James, Will, thoughts on that? 4, what do we say, guys? 4 potential Q1 opponents in this schedule, non-conference.
Yeah, I would say that.
That's not bad. Oregon, hopefully, Virginia, Alabama for sure, St. Mary's should be as well. So 4 out of that, 13 possible Q1 opponents. James?
Yeah, I mean, there's still we've discussed this a little bit when it first came out, but they're still gonna struggle with that RPI and just overall NCAA tournament seeding stuff. I mean, I think we all agree that Houston will be in contention for a good seed, but I wonder how much this will hurt them. I know Kelvin Sampson, when he met with us, mentioned that they were trying to get into a few MTs that would have boosted this a little bit, but scheduling conflicts, teams backing out and stuff didn't work out. But I'm glad you did highlight the Oral Roberts game. I'm excited for that one. Just to that guard matchup's going to be fun. But overall, I mean, Houston should do well non-conference, and they need to win most, if not all, these games if they want to have a 1 seed as a possibility.
Yeah, agreed. And another player for Oral Roberts is a former Cam Embry is a top 10 Gavi Lewis Award finalist, so he'll be home. In that Cougar Classic, Oral Roberts will be in town to play Houston and TSU. So Cam will get a chance to play in front of his mom and dad. And his mom played at Rice. His dad played at HBU. I covered both of them when they played in college. So I am very old now that their son is a freshman in college. So, oh my, yes, I need a cane to walk around now because the son of players I covered when they were in college is now in college. Okay. So, yeah, on that. Andy, thoughts on it? Possible 4 Q1. Do you think, James, you agree with James that the Cougs probably need to win all of them to, especially, obviously the 4 Q1 potential opponents to help their net chances?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if they have to win all of them, but I think at the very least, probably they have to go at least 3-1. I don't know, splits, probably calling it. Just going back to last season when they ended up having less Q1 opportunities than they originally thought when the schedule came out, just of the way things turned out with Oregon, with Virginia, of course, and then even in the MTE when they ended up playing Butler, and they lost to Wisconsin in that tournament as well. So a lot of the conversations once it came into conference play and Houston made a run, it's like, oh, well, they're doing it against American Athletic Conference Q3, Q4 opponents, and when they play Q1 teams, they're losing. And then come NCAA tournament, they were probably underseeded heavily, and they ended up making their run. So I could see that. I think 3-1 puts them in a good spot. I think, like you said, Kris, the game that's going to be circled for a lot of UH fans, and it's kind of the attention grabber, is that December 10th game against Alabama, just of the way last season ended. And like you said, the controversy where Houston and Houston's fans felt that was a goaltend and Houston should have walked away with a victory against Alabama. So that's like the top headliner. And I think really when it comes to the non-conference schedule, the biggest complaint I've read from some UH fans on the Coug fans forum is just really kind of the lack of and this is going back to what we've discussed, the lack of headliners playing at Fertitta Center.
Yep.
And no offense to Oral Roberts and TSU and some of the other schools, but it's really Alabama. And that's pretty much it. Now, Virginia, Oregon, St. Mary's, those are, premier programs, but those are all either on the road or a neutral site. So that's a complaint that's been brought up. And like I said, it's something we've touched on in the past where, people care about who the opponent is when they come into town.
And Will, I'm going to mention this, and you can add your 2 cents. Coach Sampson said this non-conference scheduling, putting it together was more difficult he wasn't going to do home and homes this year because next year's schedule, Houston joins the Big 12, and some of the non-conference schedules already put together because the Big 12 has games, a challenge with the Big East, so that's a game, and then the SEC. So you already got those games. You're not going to play Big 12 teams this year for home and home because you're going to play them next year in conference play. So that kind of cut into who Houston will play for home games this season. So this is what we got. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, if we were to call Carolina, Hubert Davis would have answered, but I digress.
I wonder because of who the Trios have on their schedule. I mean, it's packed. So I don't know if they had a chance to fit dates.
I know.
But I'm more along your line of thinking. Call Duke, call Carolina, call Kentucky. More than Bama to come to Fertitta Center.
Right. I say that to piggyback on what Andy said, and then answer the initial question. They need to win all of them because do you want to take a chance with the AAC? I mean, no, with all due respect, which typically means I'm about to disrespect you, but with all due respect, no, you have to win what's on your schedule. You have an opportunity to beat an ACC team, an SEC team. You have an opportunity to beat a Pac-12 team, and you have an opportunity to beat a West Coast Conference team. You got to do it.
Yep.
You got to do it.
I agree in the sense if you want to get as high a seat as possible. I mean, Coach Sampson doesn't care about that. That's more for media and the fans. Yes. And the pundits, haters are going to say, well, they lost at Virginia, by 2, by 3, whatever it may be, if they lose to Virginia, and they may not.
Right.
But Virginia and Oregon as road games should count as Q1 wins because they're road games. Q1 for a road opponent for Houston on the road, that's between 1 and 75. So Oregon and Virginia should be within that, should be within 1 and 75. If they're not, then that's really going to hurt the Cougs' non-conference schedule. Shifting gears, Texas Southern men's basketball announced. We'll see the difference in graphics. You can see the dates.
Man.
Just putting it out there. My intent was not to compare the graphics. I wanted to post the non-conference schedules. And when I did it, I was like, wow, one's easier to read than the other. But TSU, Texas Southern, as a SWAC school, folks who follow basketball know for a lot of years, SWAC schools don't get home games in non-conference. TSU has
Arizona State. Wow.
Arizona State, yes, that's part of an agreement between the Pac-12/Pac-10, whatever you want to call it, and the SWAC. Was announced last year, agreed upon last year, where Pac-12 schools will come to SWAC schools, I think this season and next season, I think it's a 2-season deal. So yes, Arizona State will be at TSU November 13th. Oral Roberts, TSU hosts them, so you get a chance to see Max Asmus twice in town, one leading scoring guards in the country. Then the other home game, North American. The games versus NC and Hampton are in Vegas as part of the Chris Paul HBCU Challenge that Chris Paul is a sponsor of. And the last home game, December 29th, Houston Tillotson. So the big one, marquee game, home game versus Arizona State. Other road games, man, at Texas Tech, at Houston, at Auburn, at Kansas. That's a tall order right there. And then the last road game of non-conference at Wichita State. James, Andy, Will, thoughts on this TSU non-conference schedule?
Typical. And I say that from a perspective of most HBCUs play and I don't know what they're described as elsewhere, but money games.
Yeah.
Check games.
Yep.
So to play on the road in a 4-day period, Houston, Auburn, Sanford, and then if you want to go 4 games in 12 days, Kansas. I mean, Carolina's not doing that. Duke's not doing that. So it's pretty much typical.
James?
Yeah, I agree. San Francisco's a nice way to open up. They're an underrated team. I mean, just from the TSU perspective, like Will said, a lot of it is money driven. But if you're able to, pull off an upset in just 1 or 2 of these big games, I mean, that will help them tremendously. Still, they'll probably have to, win the conference to get an NCAA tournament bid. But I mean, you're getting your guys' experience. You're playing against, marquee programs. And I think it's really cool. Like you mentioned already, Arizona State getting to come, play them on campus. That's a big deal. And because, like you said, most of the time they're going everywhere because that's the money. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice non-conference schedule, and I definitely agree with you on just the graphic side. It's definitely more visually appealing and easier to read, friendly. Yeah.
And Andy, before I go to you to wrap it up, TSU getting 4 home games. I want to say 4 home games is the most they've had in almost 20 years for non-conference.
Wow.
Because as Will talks about, money, check games. That's what HBCUs do in non-conference to help the budget. So them getting 4 home games is a big deal. I hope TSU does a good job marketing the game versus Arizona State in the sense of having a Pac-12 school come to H&P Arena, as well as Max Asmus, one of the leading scorers in the country. Come see him play against the Tigers. Andy, you first, then Will.
No, I was literally going to point that out right now that they only had 4 home games. I wasn't aware that that's the most that they've had, and you said 20 years.
It's something like that, yeah. It's been a long time.
Which to me is absurd, but wow, that's incredible. And the other thing I was going to say was just regarding the schedule. It reminded me of what Calvin always says whenever he first took over the program at Houston, where it was much easier to schedule back then when he first took over the program, and being able to set up a home and home series. In the case of TSU, like I can't remember who mentioned, I think it was James, where they're going to have a lot of opportunities for Q1 games, and if they can just knock off, a couple, come NCAA tournament time, they're certainly going to have the opportunity to have one of the strong resumes come March.
One quick question, real quick, before Will goes.
Yes.
Was it last season they knocked off Florida, right? That's who they.
Yes, they mashed Florida at Florida. Yeah,
Right, that's
almost 20 points. Yep.
And the year before that, they knocked off Texas, correct?
And one year they won at Oregon. So yeah, they knock off the last few years they've knocked off a big time program, at least one. Will?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the graphic and I'm looking at the players, and I'm sure you guys know more than I. Shaquille O'Neal.
Mm-hmm.
Is he still part of the program? Uh-oh.
I'm not sure. The new roster for this coming season is not yet posted on the website.
Okay.
So everybody you see here is from last year's squad.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I mean, he didn't do much, while he was there. So he's listed on last year's roster. He was a freshman last year. I'm not sure if he's on this year's team or not. so
Okay.
that's all I can say.
Understood.
We got Jordan Carl Nicholas, number 5. He's now trying to get a pro shot. Jordan Gilliam, number 11. P.J. Henry is from Houston. He'll be a senior this coming year, so he should be back, as far as I know. And then number 24, I think that is right there, is John Walker III, another guy who he's used his COVID 5th year and is pursuing a pro career overseas. So that's the 4 guys we see in that graphic right there. But yeah, that's where it is. And I'm hopefully try to get an interview with Coach Jones this week. If you missed it last few days, I had a chance to talk to Rice Owls coaches Lindsey Edmonds, women's basketball, and Scott Parra, men's basketball. Both of them are on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. Got another interview lined up tomorrow. Won't say who it is, but person has ties with UH. Just leave it at that. Got an interview lined up with HBU women's basketball coach later on this week. So Rocket season, it's dog days at the NBA, so I'm getting more in college basketball mode. So let's tune into the Roundball Review channel on YouTube. I'm going to wrap it up. Gentlemen, Folks Talkin Sports, James, you first. Who are you? How can folks find you? Has power been restored at your house? All that great stuff.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with me. We're still waiting on power, so hopefully comes on before not too long because it's getting hot in here. But I'm glad I was able to join. You can find me on Twitter at JDM2186. Like Kris introduced me, I'm the sports editor for the Cougars, so all my stuff is on the dailycougar.com regarding UH stuff coverage, and getting ready for football season to start, and then soon after that, basketball.
And Andy Yanez, you next, sir.
Yes, sir. People can find me on Twitter at Yanez_5. Be sure to check out Pawd, Slama, Jama on YouTube on the Clutch City Control Room YouTube account or wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. There should be news regarding that upcoming soon within the next week or so. So keep posted about that. And I did want to make one correction just regarding TSU. Now, they have obviously, of course, been in the NCAA tournament the last couple of seasons. They've actually garnered wins in the past 2 appearances that they've had. And this past season, they beat Texas A&M Corpus Christi before they moved on. So, TSU's been able to
they've been part of the first 4. And so that's part of the tournament. So they've won in the first 4. So, yep.
So they've
things
had
have turned around for them, yes.
Successful seasons, and I'll toss it over to Will now.
Will, how can folks find you, sir?
Thank you, gentlemen. Will Gibson 7 on Twitter as well as Instagram. Will knows at the Facebook. Yes, I just saw some Ohio State stuff pop across my screen. I apologize.
No, as long as it's not bad news, that's good. Okay.
No. Scotty Middleton, number 18 overall prospect in the ESPN 100. for the class of 2023 is committed to Ohio State. I thought this was coming down today. So, that Ohio State actually is in the Bahamas right now, playing the Puerto Rican national team. They beat the Egyptian national team yesterday, and they're playing the Puerto Rican national team today, and just got a commitment from Scotty Middleton, number 18 on the ESPN Top 100 list. He's a guard from Georgia, I believe, but he's coming to. I apologize. I'm doing this as we speak, so
It's live, man. It's no problem at all. It's live.
yeah, he is a 6'6" small forward from Miami, Florida.
Oh wow.
So Chris Holtman is doing it again. And while I have it, 29 student athletes received degrees today and summer commencement at Ohio State. So congratulations to those student athletes. 29 student athletes received degrees today.
Kudos to them, and see if James come back on. But till then, we're going to wrap it up. Andy, do you know a little bit about Parker Jenkins, the running back who committed to UH? What is it? Yesterday? Saturday?
Yes, that news came yesterday. I think it was Rob Sellers of 24/7 Sports is who I saw first, and kudos to them because they had the free article, and this is gonna blow Will's mind again when we get into specifics. So he's a 4-star recruit, and apparently he's ranked. He's one of the highest commits that Houston has had in recent history, and I think I want to make sure I get this correct. Yeah, if he signs his national letter of intent, he would be the 8th highest signee for the Cougars in the modern recruiting era, according to the 24/7 Sports article. But he made this announcement yesterday, Saturday morning, via Vibe Houston's Instagram page. I know you pointed out how he did to come like about an hour later for him to post it on Twitter. But yeah, that's big news for Houston in terms of being able to keep local talent with the program. And I'm sure if James, is there anything? I think we got James back. Is there anything else you'd like to add about Jenkins?
Not really. I my Wi-Fi, or I don't have Wi-Fi. My cell service has been cutting in and out. But basically, I mean, I think you hit on the main points. Just high-ranked guy. One of the a trend you'll probably start seeing a little more in the coming years, just with the move to the Big 12 and the success they're starting to build under Dana. But Andy hit basically all the basic info about him.
Yep, Parker Jenkins, the 29th best back in the nation. He had other offers from Oklahoma State, LSU, Boston College, Northwestern, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Florida, Florida State, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Oregon, and Tennessee. So that's a big get for Coach Holgorsen and the program. That's how we're going to wrap it up and close it out. I'm Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. You can catch me at HoustonRoundballReview.com. Twitter, you see right there, the HR Review. Houston Roundball Review on Instagram and YouTube. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you for the folks who commented on the YouTube channel. Tony, Wise, King, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for tuning in. We covered a lot in sports today on FTS. We talked Texans, some Astros, some Deshaun Watson, some Kareem Hunt. So we covered NFL and the Browns as well. So that's what we're going to try to do here on Folks Talking Sports going forward as we get really closer and closer to the start of college football season and the start of the NFL as well. And at some point, Will, Andy, James, we're going to have time to discuss a Big Ten media rights deal because it seems the agreement date changes and has changed since May. So once that is done, we can discuss that and hammer out all the money Will's going to be getting and sponsoring, spending time here on FTS when he gets that money from Commissioner Kevin Warren. So we look forward to that. So as always, thank you very much, fellas, for joining us. Thank you to Kim Y. Davis for taking time to join us today on Folks Talking Sports. You better catch the audio of this on the podcast platforms, like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts in about an hour once we're done here. We hope you enjoyed it. Tell your friends about it. We're still looking for sponsors for this show, Folks Talkin Sports, as well as Let's Rage Cougs, and of course, the Let's Talk Houston Rockets. Thank you again. I'm Kris Gardner for Andy Yanez, James Mueller, and Willy Gibson. Until next Sunday, take care. Peace.